Foremost, and I think forever will be a real estate professional. So I've spent most of my career, including being young, staring at Lego blocks and building.
If you had to select a single metric to summarize your entire real estate journey,
Venture capital that has gone into operating businesses that I've been a part of.
hello and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. This is Nik Shah. Today, we're going to learn from Aleksandr Gampel. Alex, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick. How are you guys?
Good. Likewise, seems like you're joining us from the East Coast. Very excited to, learn from what you're doing in the real estate space. But before we get into all that, people really want to know, Alex, how do you introduce yourself these days? What are you focused on?
Yeah, that's a good question. And foremost, and I think forever will be a real estate professional. So I've spent most of my career, including being young, staring at Lego blocks and buildings. I pretty much spent most of my career in real estate investing from an institutional perspective, and now I'm building a technology business that sits tangentially and on top of the real estate world. I think that's how we start.
So seems like you've been in real estate through and through your career. But before we get into your journey, people really want to know how you're like. So Alex, what spirit animal or bird best describes you and your philosophy?
I think passionate is definitely the right word. I'm always on when it comes to things I'm really interested in and communicating those things to other folks. I think passionate is definitely the right word to describe me.
And is there a spirit animal or bird that you think best resonates with this passionate, always on operating philosophy?
I think I'm like a golden retriever.
Why golden retriever?
I think I'm always excited. I'm always eager for things. I like people. I get energy out of interacting with people. I think once we dive deeper into Cuby, between my partner and I definitely embody more of the extroverted nature out of our dynamic and interesting partnership.
I love it. So Alex, if you had to select a single metric to summarize your entire real estate journey so far, ideally a dollar metric, what would you say that is?
I think given I've adopted a combination of two almost irrelevant industries that I've been a part of, one being real estate and the other being venture capital. I think collectively between the two, I've deployed capital into A, buildings of all types of asset classes, and B, have raised dollars for operating companies that sit on top of buildings and capacity. And I'd put that in maybe several $1 billion worth of deals I've worked on the real estate side, and a couple $100 million worth of venture deals I've worked on in terms of venture capital that has gone into operating businesses that I've been a part of.
Fascinating, Alex. Several billion in real estate investments and helping real estate operating companies raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Sounds amazing. But let's go back into a phase in your life where it was zero. Can you walk us through, what's been your broad trajectory so far that led you to today?
Sure. I think it all starts with coming from a real estate family. I feel like I've always been around real estate. Like I said, my mom likes to joke. I used to stare at buildings when I was young, just walk the streets, look up instead of looking. So I've always liked buildings. I like real estate. I like the idea that four walls make up the backdrop of our lives in some capacity. It's where we live, it's where we work, it's where we play, it's a tangible asset. You can touch it, you can feel it. So I've always enjoyed real estate. I have an engineering background as well. So I've always liked technology to some extent. Luckily, those worlds, they've started to fuse, and I'm sure you're seeing more and more of that across the folks you're interviewing. But those worlds are now starting to converge as we have access to technology to make real estate processes, just generally just things within real estate more efficient, whether it comes to construction, which is what we're solving, or even operating a building. So I started my career, I guess, studying engineering, but never was an engineer. I went into the business side of things. So I started out on Wall Street and in finance, hated it, funny enough, and slowly pivoted to real estate private equity. And from there, kind of randomly and not non-linearly, was recruited to come help build a real estate, a couple of real estate businesses. And from there, that's where the flywheel started spinning.
Fascinating. So it seems like you come from a real estate family and you use that but you initially focused on engineering and finance. You didn't like it, but used the super strengths you gained from thinking analytically in engineering and knowing numbers in finance to come back into real estate private equity and then build a few real estate businesses. If you were to think about your early days, what advice did you absorb from the mentors and parental figures in your life?
I think there's been a couple. I pride myself in my network. I think that's always the thing I would advise folks to value, especially early on, is making an extra $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in your career in a given year isn't going to make or break you. I think having access to the right people long term is what ultimately unlocks that real unlock. So I think valuing your net worth being your network is optimal. I think some of the advice I've gotten is exactly in that realm, and I pass that advice on. I think also, the advice I give and have gotten is just be intellectually curious. It's easier to be good at things that you find incredibly exciting versus not. So those are kind of the things I pick up and the things I pass on.
And as you built an amazing network, and like you rightly said, your net worth is your network. You know, what were some of the highs and lows of getting into real estate private equity and in real estate operating businesses?
I mean, as with anything in finance, I think the younger you are, the more you get worked to death, which is good. It's almost like a pilgrimage, right? You gotta learn the basics. You gotta go through the hard stuff. You gotta learn how to be an Excel monkey. And those things are important because they set up a certain foundation to be analytical behind the things you're executing on. I think I'm probably not the right case study for everybody, and I have a long way to go. Let's start with that. But I'm probably not the right case study for everyone because I was able to leverage my network to jump between a lot of different things, which, for a lot of folks would look more linear versus kind of asymmetric the way I went about it. So I think, to answer your question, some of the hardship is like uncertainty in a way, which is good. It allows for a dichotomy of experiences. It allows you to be like a polymath, taking data points from a bunch of different things and applying those data points. So there's a good and a bad to it.
There is a good and a bad to it indeed. Alex, have you ever been at a phase in your life where you couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel?
I think I'm a bit more fortunate than that. I'm a natural born optimist. I think I always try to see kind of the silver lining in things, even when things are uncertain or things look like, you're having a bad day. I like to zoom out. And I like to find solutions. So I think I'm pretty resourceful. I've never had a moment where I didn't think or ultimately find the solution to a problem I was having. So I think it's important to be resourceful and optimistic. And for anyone that's pessimistic out there, we live in the most exciting time, despite what the news shows. We have the most exciting breakthroughs in innovation. If you look at certain metrics across really the global population, things are improving year over year. So I think it's good to be optimistic. I think it's rightful that we are optimistic.
Indeed, optimism does matter for everybody listening right now who's struggling right now. Be a natural born optimist like Alex. That will help you see the silver lining, zoom out, and find breakthroughs in innovation. Alex, what's been your best year professionally so far?
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to interpret, but I think there's nothing more rewarding than building something from scratch, something as hard as what we're building now, and seeing kind of, results from the team day over day, year over year. And I think to me, that's the most rewarding thing. And I don't necessarily know if it's quantifiable from a dollar perspective. It's more quantifiable from something didn't exist before and now it does because of the work you put in and inception of. I like to credit my partner a lot in our business from some of the technological innovation, but just seeing it come to life is incredibly rewarding.
It seems like you love building companies in real estate by connecting all the data points you've learned in your career to focus on solving really critical problems. Help listeners understand what's your main focus area these days.
Yeah, so I'm one of the two founders of a company called Cuby Technologies, Inc. At Cuby, we design, we develop, we deploy mobile microfactories that manufacture and assemble homes for the masses. Really simply put, we're trying to do what Henry Ford did for cars. We want to do that for housing. And I think it's incredibly and fundamentally important, especially today when you look at first world countries where most folks are exiting the blue collar workforce. If you look at construction, there's too many folks retiring and not enough folks replacing them. As a result, we don't have enough physical hands building the homes that we need out there. And homes are becoming incredibly expensive and inaccessible for most of the population across first world countries. So we think we have a solution, and it seems to be working, to take away the skilled labor hours required to build homes. And this solution comes in the form of our product, which is a mobile microfactory. For your listeners that might not have access to a visual, it's exactly what you think it is. Imagine you can shove a bunch of machines into containers and set up a close proximity factory to where you're building homes. And that factory produces kit of parts, almost like Legos, that look really traditional to typical inputs that go into a home, that then make their way down the street to be put together into a home in a much more cost-effective way because of that skilled labor reduction. So that's generally where I spend 99% of my time.
Mobile micro factories to help builders assemble mobile and manufacture homes. What are the pain points that home builders face? Like you mentioned a few of them, like skilled labor. What pain points do home builders face today, and how is Cuby's mobile micro factory helping them solve it?
Yeah, so like taking a step back, I think generally home builders, unlimited demand at the moment. It's virtually unlimited. We say, let's just pick the US, there's millions of homes that need to be built, millions of homes that could be absorbed tomorrow. They're unable to go take share of this incredible opportunity because they physically can't build quick enough, and they physically don't have access to enough labor to go execute. So I think we solve around the pain point there. And because there's not enough skilled labor out there, the cost to build a home right now, say it's $1, 70% of that cost is related to that labor problem. To the extent you can drive that down, you bring down cost in general, which brings up margin for a home builder. And hopefully by building more homes, you increase supply, and therefore you reduce cost overall for everyone. It's a simple economics equation. So what we're offering in terms of value proposition is the ability to go put out a mobile microfactory that locally can service home builders and help them build homes in a much more efficient manner, while at the same time saving quite an interesting data point around cost for them.
I see 70% of home building costs are related to labor, and seems like
On the hard costs.
Yeah.
On the vertical hard costs.
So for a home builder listening to this right now, what's the ideal journey they should take of working with you and your?
Yeah, I think we're despite now spending 400,000 engineering hours, getting from kind of concept to now our first mobile microfactory that's in operation, and we're testing around it. We still are early relative to where we want to be. We want to put out 275 mobile microfactories in the next 10 years. The way we work with folks right now, folks can reach out to us. We can have conversations. We can see if we can be helpful, but we're still early. We're not doing what we want to be doing, which is 20 factories per year. But we have our first several factories that we're planning on deploying with partners already. So let's say that we're taking inbounds, but we're not necessarily executing on inbounds just yet. We're getting to know folks who we want to partner with. Our model is quite interesting. We look like McDonald's. That's probably the best analogy, in the sense that like Nik Shah tomorrow could launch a factory with us as a partner. Nik Shah could be the off-taker, meaning you could smoke your own supply. That factory builds 200 homes a year on a consistent basis. That could be all your DevCo's demand. Or we could launch a factory together, and we could be servicing a bunch of Bobs that are within a 150-mile radius building homes. So it really depends whether we talk to someone in your audience that wants back one of our factories and launch with us, whether they want to launch with us and consume its demand because they have a home building arm, or they're just Bob Smith, the home builder that wants to know when a factory will make it to their locale so they can go and use it to build themselves homes.
Fascinating. So seems like you have support for both types of customer journeys, whether a home builder just wants to install a microfactory focusing on their specific entitled land and building homes there, or whether a home builder just wants to partner with you and create a node that or a hub or microfactory that will have a lot of spokes coming out and helping local builders in the area. Fascinating. So Alex, what does Cuby's mobile home factory do that separates you from 99% of the rest of the market?
So I don't think anyone is building a vertically integrated solution like we are. A mobile microfactory is the whole intent is to create a distributed network of manufacturing facilities that are quick to erect, low capex to erect, etc. It's really an antithesis of what's been tried and true in modular and prefab to date. I don't think we need to dwell into it, but really it's the notion that we can launch a lot of these in a repeatable manner and they can service a locale. No one is doing what we're doing from an end-to-end production capacity. So meaning we touch every aspect of a home. We're not just doing, say, the foundation, and that's what we're installing as a cog in the wheel to the process. We're touching everything. So there's things that we take in as raw input and we say in the mobile microfactory, we make windows or we make helical piers for the foundation or we make framing elements, etc. That's what we make. There's a certain amount of inputs that are raw input. And then there's things like the sheetrock behind you or PEX pipes or everything that essentially we wouldn't make ourselves, like a kitchen cabinet or a toilet. We're still taking in and preparing those items. But end of the day, we get to palletize what a home is in stages and send it down the street to be assembled on site in a very traditional manner. So what's different about us is everything from business model to how we're executing on this. And everything is really about the machine that builds the machine. So how do we replicate this? And how do we empower existing incumbents to use it? And we're really trying hard not to be, in quotes, disruptive to the industry. We're trying to be just a better process and delivery mechanism via traditional construction.
Yeah, seems like you're focused on helping accelerate existing incumbents rather than creating a new process flow yourself. And seems like each one of your micro factories will build about 200 homes a year when it's fully stabilized. How did you come up with the number of 275 factories in the next 10 years?
I think that's a loaded question. Day one, we were focused on infrastructure of how do we not just build one home? How do we not just build one factory? Our business model is not predicated on one factory. It's predicated on a network of distributed factories, or a distributed network of factories. So everything we do is to create systems and processes to be able to replicate the hardware, set up the hardware, operate the hardware. For that, we have a ton of software, ironically, that sits on top of all the hardware.
Fascinating. That seems like you have a really strong software system that manages all the hardware that's being produced in different factories right now so that, it can eventually be assembled in the microfactory nearing the development site. Is that the right summary?
So Cuby is a combination of a kit of parts that make up a building, the machines that make the kit of parts, and the software that helps operate the process of manufacturing the kit of parts and then assembling on site. So that's really a collection of what Cuby is. And luckily, my partner has spent 20 years in lean manufacturing and building complicated hardware. So the know-how replicating and mass commercializing is almost, it's in-house and inherent.
Indeed. It seems like you have an amazing co-founder. Seems like you're working on a really critical solution, which is building more homes and helping builders accelerate that while saving on, majority of the hard costs, which are labor costs. Are there any risks of working with Cuby?
The only risk, and I'm obviously biased, right, is it depends on someone's risk appetite. We generally, us collectively, we all play in a very conservative industry. As much as we've de-risked and we feel like we've de-risked, it's still a conversation of risk profile for someone. Someone might still want to be doing things the way they're doing them today, which is fine. We generally, at this point, work with folks that are a bit more progressive, a bit more eager for a solution in the market. So the only risk we see is just a factor of time and where we are today. As it reflects on someone else, not in us.
And are there any risks related to state and local zoning ordinances and regulations?
No. So the way we've developed the system is it's a kit of parts. That kit of parts very much resembles what a home built by one of the top production home builders looks like today. We took International Building Code standards. We tried to layer everything from materials to how our homes come together on site to reflect that. The beauty of our system is it's incredibly dynamic. We can slightly change the system to adjust to local code if we need to, but in most cases, we don't even have to do anything. And what's important about our system is this isn't modular. We're not building a room off-site that we're shipping. This is on-site assembly, which means inspectors can look behind walls. They can inspect during their 5 or so inspection processes. So we don't deviate from the norm of process.
Indeed. And how do you monetize this, Alex? Or how will you monetize this once it's fully up to scale and running and you're building 20 factories a year and each factory is spinning out 200 homes a year?
We have a whole detailed master plan and it is broken out into decades. I think it ends with us being a home builder, a material supply company, a logistics company, etc. But really the first phase today, we need to get as many factories out there as possible. And it's a function of cost of capital. So we're partnering with folks that launch factories with us. We monetize by running the factories. With time, we'll just take on debt to launch our own factories without partners that then will serve as small home builders locally. there's a whole plan to it, but we monetize by putting out factories out there that build homes.
Makes sense. So seems like phase one is working with partners to help them build factories, progressive partners who have a risk appetite of trying out what's on the bleeding edge of home building technologies and monetizing that. And then phase two and beyond seems to be taking on your own financing sources to build your own factories.
Yeah, and I want to be careful with the word bleeding edge. We're trying to be very conservative in our approach. We are definitely not bleeding edge. Our process might be bleeding edge, but the end construction process is not bleeding edge. And that's important because I think the further you deviate from what's done today, the less likely you are to have adopters, or at least early adopters in the industry, given it's a very conservative industry. So we're trying to plug into a process that home builders already know today as much as possible.
Yeah, completely agree. It seems like your processes are bleeding edge, but you're still very conforming to the end product, which is going to be as close to, it's going to be even better than existing homes, but as close to existing homes as possible, compliant with international building codes.
That's exactly right.
What's the story, Alex, behind naming the company Cuby?
It's a grid-based system, like a cube, right? So it's also a grid. So it's a grid-based system. Just, I don't think there was too much thought that went into it, candidly. It's stuck around now. And I think we have a pretty well-developed brand now that folks recognize what we're doing. So there's no deeper meaning beyond that.
And in your journey with Cuby so far, what has been your aha moment of scale?
I think there really weren't aha moments. The aha moment was day one where my partner and I looked around and said, look, there's really three things that need to happen to make industrialization and construction a thing. One, you can't build centralized gigafactories. That approach hasn't worked. It's too hard. I won't get into why. There's like 20 reasons I can name, but it's about creating a distributed network of factories, low capex, highly repeatable, highly scalable, etc. Two, it's important not to change or deviate away from end product. What is a home? The further you go away from that by innovating around materials, by innovating around over-engineering what a home is, the further you deviate away from A, compliance, which we just talked about, and B, incumbent adoption. So we think end product should stay the same. So that's thesis number two. Thesis number three, this isn't the type of industry where you can be Roadster and then Model 3. Meaning you start out super expensive, high end, and then eventually make your way down to a cheaper cost product. It won't work that way. Developers do not care to overpay, as you know. They're all about yield on cost. If you can't be cheaper or at cost parity to traditional construction today, your solution will not be relevant. So thesis number three was around getting cost as low as possible to be able to go to market day one versus saying, oh, we'll do it at scale. So I think those are really the big, not going to say aha moments, but those are the principles that our business is built on.
Yeah, sounds very fundamentally robust. So it seems like your products are on a distributed network of factories rather than a centralized one. And then trying to, not over-engineer the home, make the home what it is right now, and also trying to deliver it to builders at the cheapest cost possible instead of trying an exorbitantly high priced. That seems like a lot of things that you're trying to bring together. How do you balance the needs for all of those?
I think we had a thesis day one, and as an early stage company, things change all the time. You're always iterating, and as my partner puts it, a successful startup is one that fails, 49% of the time in terms of the different steps you take, but gets it right on 51% of the time. Like, you should be almost making more mistakes than you are getting things right, but you should be doing it very quickly and iterating on those things very quickly. It's just early stage companies are all about. So in terms of prioritization, like, our overall thesis has only been one KPI, reduction in skilled labor hours. That's one KPI. That's our North Star. That's all we're aiming. The things that shape that change every day, and we're iterating every day. But fundamentally, there's no prioritization of anything beyond that one thing.
Yeah, seems like you're pretty laser focused on helping builders reduce the skilled labor hours while still delivering homes to their customers as quickly as possible. For a builder listening to this right now, how should they reach out to you and your team?
Yeah, I think just our website, cubytechnologies.com. I get CC'd on anything that's inbound and potentially business development oriented. So just visiting our website and submitting a submission form on the contact page is the best way.
Indeed. Now let's talk about the future, Alex. As you think about the state of the housing market in America right now and access to all the information you get from so many venture-backed startups as well as your own thesis. What's your vision or ultimate vision for the future of the real estate industry, specifically the home building industry?
Uh, Sorry, do you mind repeating that? I just had to silence something. Apologies.
No worries. So now, Alex, let's talk about the future. You have exposure to a lot of real estate startups right now by helping them raise so much capital. You've been a real estate investor in the past, and you're also focused on helping shape the future of the home building industry. What's your ultimate vision for the future of the real estate industry and the home building industry?
I think real estate remains the best sector. We talked about earlier why. Personally, for me, I'm passionate about the sector. I think it's important. Like I said, it's the backdrop to our lives. It's where we live, we work, we play. I think institutional dollars, of course, will keep flowing into real estate. It's an important asset class, one of the biggest asset classes. I think, though, fundamentally, there's a big issue around affordability. When you look at the residential sector, whether it's for rent, for own, I believe statistically 50% of the U.S. can't afford a $250,000 home. And I believe 50% of the U.S. is rent burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent. So I think that problem is going to keep growing. I think it's very tough for developers to pencil their deals right now. Therefore, they're building less. Ironic, because it's too expensive for them to build and renters can't afford homes. So in order to solve that, you got to build more to bring down rents, to bring down cost of ownership, et cetera. So it's a circular reference. So what's exciting to me is anyone building around the idea that you can industrialize construction like we're doing. So to me, I do think that because of the inability for developers to pencil deals, it's becoming really hard to make money as a developer. I think developers are going to be looking toward interesting solutions that will help them decrease cost, accelerate pace, et cetera. So I think it's an exciting time in the world to embrace technology that sits on top of real estate, and we're seeing that adoption happen rather quickly.
Absolutely. Alex, I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions. So Alex, what do you know about the home building industry that would surprise most people?
This is an easy one. I think, first of all, this would surprise most folks because I know most folks don't even know a single construction worker. I love going to places or meeting with people and asking if they have a relative, if they have a friend that works in construction, especially my age, 9 out of 10 times, no one knows a single construction worker. That also means that when most folks go tour a home in an apartment, all they see, they don't understand how a home is made. And it's interesting because other products, folks actually have a general understanding of what goes into products. They analyze products before they buy them. But when you look at a home or an apartment building, they don't understand what it's made up of. And I think people have this notion that a home is this high quality product. It's the most expensive purchase of your life, but if you only get to see what subcontractors and GCs do behind closed doors when they're building that thing, man, most walls have a pee bottle feed in and put behind the wall. Well, you have shortcuts. They're not safe. Let's put it that way. There's certain things that folks are doing just to cut costs or to accelerate timing, mistakes that they're reworking. I mean, a home, by today's standards is not a very good product in most cases, despite it being incredibly expensive. And that's a simple function of supply and demand. I'll put it another way. If you live in New York City and you get a terrible haircut, the barber does not care because there's such a big demand for other people that will line up to get a haircut. So they don't have to focus on quality so much. The same thing is happening in beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah, amazing insight. Yeah, if you're buying the biggest investment or the asset of your life right now, you should be paying a lot more attention to how that home was built, even if you are in a significant bidding war. Because, knowing more about how the home was built matters more than the interior of the home that you have fallen in love with, which is completely changeable. Alex, if a family office calls you and says, hey, they had a liquidity event, they have allocated to most asset classes, but now they have $100 million left and they just want to invest that in real estate, how would you advise them?
I'm a big proponent of interesting real estate is what I call it, right? To me, it's not as interesting to do value add multi or just buying a boring office building or an industrial site. I like to look for arbitrage and business opportunity. I think office to residential conversions, where I've spent a lot of time, is an interesting space. I think being a propco behind interesting operating companies is a unique opportunity. So anything with real hair on it, I think therefore, higher risk, higher return. Also, if you're a family office and you're generally passive, right, the right advice is to sponsor to GP with right now because equity is hard to come by. So a lot of sponsors are willing to give access to co-GP returns or potentially, some sliver of their pie if you're providing into the capital stack.
Yeah, indeed. Completely agree. Alex, what's the best financial advice you've ever received?
Spend less than you make.
And Alex, like what organization or institution would you fix if you had the time?
Organization or institution from a public sector perspective?
Any sector, any industry, any country.
Part of the problem when it comes to building buildings is the physical aspect of it. That's one, but also the bureaucratic aspect around how long it takes for you to entitle, subdivide, permit, really the process before a developer has the ability to put a shovel in the ground. That entire pre-development process tied to the bureaucratic local organizations that make it very hard for a developer to move forward with a project. I think those are things that should be addressed and can be addressed.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think the zoning is just a colloquialism for the massively lengthy process you have to get through just to get a building entitled before you even start constructing it. And that really adds up to the cost of real estate. Final question, Alex. If your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, what's the number one skill you would teach them?
I'll preface this. I'm probably the worst mentor. My partner is incredibly good at managing teams, especially like hundreds and hundreds of folks. I'm not that person, so I'm probably not a good mentor either. But a lot of young folks reach out that I like those people have helped throughout my career and being nice and whatnot. But the advice I would give if I was mentoring someone is just, like I said, stay very intellectually curious and focus on building up your network and thinking about long-term versus short-sighted wins.
Yeah, your network is your net worth. That was Alex Gampel, the co-founder of Cuby, golden retriever, an eternal optimist. If you want to reach out, if you're a builder looking to build a lot of homes and are constrained by labor shortages, reach out to them at cubytechnologies.com. Alex will be personally CC'd on that email. I'll add the link to the description. This is Nik Shah. If you ever want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on Nik at home.llc. Thank you.